Asteria stood by the viewport of her small transport craft, staring out at the endless sprawl of stars. Outside, the velvet black of space shimmered with distant lights, brilliant, cold, and indifferent. She steadied her breathing, bracing herself for the assignment she had been given. The Horus Dominion had ordered her to execute a traitor, nothing more and nothing less. She had done this a dozen times before, crossing parsecs at the Dominion's bidding. Any reluctance had been meticulously scraped away by the training she'd endured, the enhancements they had integrated into her muscles and bones, and the mental conditioning that erased unnecessary emotions. She was an executioner, specifically designed for efficiency with no place for doubt. Yet something stirred inside her as she approached Skyfall Station. In the cockpit, an alert pinged, letting her know she was only minutes from docking. She noticed how each breath felt slightly heavier than it should, how her gauntlet, sleek and metallic around her left forearm, pulsed with a dim violet light that seemed to echo something deep within her mind. She exhaled slowly. Her interface monitor showed a rotating holographic blueprint of Skyfall Station, scrolled with lines of Dominion data. The station was a derelict mining outpost, abandoned years ago when the veins of ore dried up and the region became unprofitable. A perfect hiding place for someone desperate enough to vanish beyond Dominion control. And now, it was also an ideal place for the Dominion to dispose of someone without leaving a trace. Ren Voss read the data feed, a human engineer indicted for stealing forbidden Dominion technology, records of gene splicing projects, rumored mind control prototypes, and official logs that could, if publicized, compromise the entire hierarchy. He had to be silenced, with no possibility of survival. Asteria had performed such tasks in the past, wiping out rebellious scientists or low-level officials who threatened the Dominion's iron grasp. This was her function, her purpose, to locate, confront, and remove. She rarely wondered why. The Dominion had crafted her talents carefully, shaping her to never second-guess an order. Her landing sequence began, sending vibrations along the hull as the craft settled into a docking clamp. She donned her helmet, slender with a matte finish that concealed all traces of her alien features. An anomaly. Half-human, half-Scythe, a hybrid of genes that gave her advantages in speed, reflexes, and the capacity for certain psionic techniques. These gifts were leveraged for killing. That was all. She had been told that her origins were found in a lab. She did not doubt it. When the docking corridor pressurized, she slid open the hatch and stepped inside. The air smelled stale with a hint of ozone discharge from the flickering overhead lights. She advanced, boots clanging on the rusted metal walkway. The corridor was lit only by emergency strips of illumination running along the walls. Gravity fluctuated slightly, giving her steps a weightlessness for a fraction of a second before pulling her down with more force than usual. A malfunction, or perhaps the station's systems had simply fallen into disrepair. She walked deeper into the labyrinth of corridors. Occasionally she heard a distant hiss of steam or the squeal of metal contracting with temperature shifts. Now and then she glimpsed old signage scrawled in multiple languages indicating abandoned living quarters or cargo bays. Everything reeked of neglect and emptiness. Yet, according to her briefing, Ren Voss was here, and her scanners confirmed a faint life signature in the station's core. With her gauntlets display, she pinpointed the signature. She quickened her pace. This mission felt slightly off to her, an inexplicable sense stirring in her mind. She pushed the feeling aside, reminding herself that she had never once hesitated during an assignment. Her body was meticulously honed to carry out exterminations. The last time she had even questioned a Dominion order, the memory was hazy, like a dream half forgotten, leaving only a phantom ache in her head. She had awakened in a Dominion medbay with new scars and heavier augmentations. The conditioning had been reinforced, the hesitation was gone. Until now, an echo threatened to re-emerge. She forced herself to concentrate on the layout. Turning a corner, she caught sight of a half-open bulkhead door. Past it, a corridor gave way to what looked like a maintenance bay. Hunched over a console, a figure was tapping a datapad, seemingly oblivious to her arrival. She recognized him immediately. Short brown hair, a slight build, his rumpled jumpsuit stained with grease. Ren Voss. Her gauntlet responded to her recognition, the violet glow intensifying. She paused in the shadows, observing him. He appeared entirely too relaxed, as if merely performing repairs or tinkering with some old circuit board. Asteria wondered if it was a trap. Slowly she moved forward, raising her left arm. The energy blade within the gauntlet would erupt at her command, humming with lethal potential. She had already routed additional power to it, ensuring a quick, clean kill. No fuss, no wasted effort. She exhaled and stepped into the maintenance bay. "I know you're there," Ren said without even turning around. The data pad in his hands beeped. He blew out a breath that sounded exasperated. "Just a second, though. I'm about to win this hand, and I don't want to lose my bet." Asteria tilted her head, confused. She advanced, her footstep echoing. He spun in the chair, datapad in one hand, wearing a grin that somehow seemed both friendly and defiant. "Ah," he said, "so they finally sent someone after me. Took them long enough. I guess you're the Dominion's best, huh?" She didn't answer. Instead, she raised her gauntlet. Violet light flickered along the edges of a blade that extended from her forearm. "Ren Voss," she said, voice modulated behind her helmet. "You are ordered to surrender and face execution for stealing classified technology." He lifted an eyebrow. "Ordered to surrender and face execution? Sounds like you're giving me a real incentive to comply." He paused the game on his datapad and set it aside. "You're not giving me any chance to talk, are you?" Her conditioning told her that such conversation was useless. She was to kill him. Her instructions had been crystal clear: no capture, just elimination. She stepped forward, blade humming. Her muscles tensed, ready to pounce. And yet she didn't lunge, not immediately. Something about his eyes, the way he peered at her with casual familiarity, unsettled her. "You don't remember me," he said softly. "Figures. That's the Dominion for you." He rose from the chair, both hands visible to show he wasn't immediately armed. "They can't stand the idea that you and I shared anything that might break their control." She blinked behind her visor. A dull pressure began in the back of her skull. "What are you talking about?" He took a step sideways, moving away from the console. She shifted to keep him in view, blade at the ready. He shrugged. "Just that you and I go way back. Obviously they wiped that from your memory. You were always the best at what you did, though I guess it's a slightly different skill set now, so... Are you going to slice me in half right here?" Her training demanded one course of action: attack, incapacitate, kill. But the puzzle of his words tangled in her mind. She felt a flutter of emotion, annoyance, confusion, suspicion. She raised the blade a little higher. "You are stalling," she said. "This conversation is pointless." He sighed. "Pointless, maybe. But if there's even a shred of memory left in that brain of yours, I can't help wanting to poke at it. After all, if you kill me, I can't exactly file a complaint, can I?" Before she could respond, the datapad beeped again, and Rin glanced at it over his shoulder. "Damn, the AI just took all my credits. I guess I bet too high." He smirked up at Asteria. "Not that I'd get to spend them if you do your job." She lunged forward, letting muscle memory take over. Her blade slashed downward, aimed for a lethal blow at his torso. He jerked sideways with unexpected speed, letting the blade hiss past him by mere inches. He sprang back toward a cluster of half-broken crates, shoving them into her path. She cut through them effortlessly, the violet energy sizzling through metal and plastic. He took off at a sprint, and instinctively she darted after him. She wouldn't allow his words to distract her from the mission. Her boots pounded the grated floor, the station's artificial gravity flickering again, making her leap slightly higher than intended. She landed, pivoting to see him scuttling around a corner. She followed, gaining ground with each stride. He tried to throw debris behind him, loose pipes, a rusted panel. She sliced them aside with practiced ease. "Stop running," she called, voice echoing through the corridor. "Stop chasing," came his distant reply. "We both know neither is going to happen." She gritted her teeth, pushing forward. Ahead, a ventilation shaft hatch hissed shut. She approached, scanning the environment. A small scattering of footprints on the dusty floor indicated he'd dropped through a shaft in the ceiling. She traced the marks, noting a handprint left in the grime near a ladder. She hooked her blade back into the gauntlet's casing. No sense in crawling around with a lethal weapon extended. A clanging noise from the ventilation system overhead told her exactly where Ren was. She scaled the ladder, pried open the hatch, and dove in, ignoring the stale smell. The Dominion had genetically modified her respiratory system to handle low oxygen conditions. If Ren thought to hide or hamper her with environmental hazards, he was mistaken. She crawled swiftly, following the faint echoes. Her visor helped track heat signatures, a function that flickered on her heads-up display. She saw a thermal glow ahead. Ren was trying to push deeper, but the cramped duct slowed him. The moment she closed the distance, he kicked out a grate beneath him, tumbled through, and vanished. She followed, dropping down into a small cargo hold. Ren stood a few yards away, a multi-tool clutched in his hand, looking exasperated. All right, he said, eyes darting around. This is not exactly the best place to run from an unstoppable assassin. You mind if I try a different corridor, maybe one with more cover? She advanced. I do not need you to amuse me with commentary. You stole from the Dominion. Now you face the consequence. Yeah, well, the Dominion has stolen far worse from people like you and me, he snapped, stepping back, only to collide with an overturned crate. His voice lowered. Could you at least consider the possibility that you're being used? She faltered a second, a moment that allowed him to slip through a side hatch. She pursued, cursing her uncharacteristic hesitation. The corridor she entered was narrower, the lights dimmer. She heard the whir of old fans, the hiss of steam from cracked pipes. Over the station speakers, a mechanical voice droned with some archaic system update. She paid it no attention. Her entire focus was on chasing Ren. She would end this quickly, then radio her success to the Dominion. She found him trapped at a dead end. The corridor ended in a sealed bulkhead door. A red light indicated zero power. He spun to face her, back pressed to the metal. So, he said, a forced grin on his lips, here we are. Indeed, she replied, stepping closer. She raised her gauntlet, prepared to activate the blade. She was so close now she could see the sweat beading on his temple. He looked both terrified and strangely relieved. Asteria, he said quietly. The name struck her like a blow to the chest, though she didn't know why. She tried to maintain composure. That is not my name, she stated. The Dominion had never used that word. They simply referred to her by a designation, Subject X-17, or the Executioner. He exhaled shakily. It was your name once. Let me guess, they told you your memory was worthless, or you never had one at all, or maybe they just poured a ton of post-hypnotic suggestions into your skull until you couldn't even form the question. But I remember, and I bet if you dig deep enough, you do too. Her head pounded. She felt a flicker of an image, a sterile laboratory corridor, men and women in lab coats, a sense of cold dread. She forced it away. I have my orders, she said, leveling the blade at his throat. You are out of time. A thunderous roar echoed through the station. It came from somewhere below, reverberating in the walls. A chill rippled down her spine. She reflexively turned her head in the direction of the noise, and Ren took the chance to duck under her arm. He scrambled to the side of the corridor, slamming a control panel. Sparks flew and a second door opened. The air pressure shifted, and a gale of musty wind rushed in, accompanied by the howling of old machinery. Sorosely, she hissed, pivoting to chase him, but the floor beneath her trembled again as another roar, deeper this time, rumbled from the station's lower levels. She had no intel on any living inhabitants here besides Ren. It wasn't supposed to be inhabited by anything, yet that roar was undeniably organic, perhaps mechanical as well, and it was large. She sprinted after him, each step echoed by flickers of gravity that made her leaps unpredictable. She vaulted over fallen scaffolding, following the beep on her gauntlet that tracked his life signature. She found him near a shuttered cargo lift, panting. He seemed to be messing with the controls. He glanced up, panic in his eyes. You hear that, right? Something is alive down there, she said. He grimaced. Alive might be an overstatement. Could be undead or part machine or who knows what. Station logs mention something about a failed biotech experiment that was abandoned along with the ore. I only found partial data, but it doesn't sound friendly. She scanned the corridor. We must leave. This place is a tomb. Couldn't agree more. He tugged at the cargo lift's lever, and the mechanism groaned. But the main docking bay is a couple levels away, unless you have your own ship, which I'm guessing you do. But I also guess you're not about to let me on board that ship peacefully. She raised her gauntlet, deciding that it was time to finish this. The Dominion had not informed her of any other threat on the station, so presumably it was either an unexpected hazard or they had deemed it irrelevant. She could dispatch Ren, retrieve whatever stolen data he carried, and return to her craft. The plan was simple, but something made her pause. The glimmer of fear in Ren's eyes was genuine. The roars reverberating through the station grew louder, as though the monstrous presence was ascending from the depths. Perhaps it had detected movement. Perhaps it just recognized new prey. Okay, Ren said, glancing at her with grudging hope. Temporary truce? Because honestly, I'd rather deal with the unstoppable assassin than whatever that is. She didn't relax, but she didn't move to kill him either. We have no alliance, she declared coldly. I will eliminate you once I no longer require your help. He nodded, forcing a shaky grin. Fair enough. I'll take that over immediate death. He gave the cargo lift control one last yank and the rusted platform shuddered open. Down we go, ironically. She stepped onto the lift, keeping a wary eye on him. He stepped on after her. The platform descended, its gears squealing in protest. The air grew warmer, thick with a smell of old coolant and decaying organic matter. She could almost taste the metallic tang on her tongue. The darkness below was lit by only a few flickering bulbs. She prepared her blade, listening for the creature's roars, which had gone strangely quiet. Ren swallowed. You said you have a ship. Might want to get us out of here quickly, because I doubt the station's going to hold up if that beast starts rampaging. Also, and this is just a guess, the station's main reactor is dangerously unstable. I was fiddling with it earlier. Another reason not to linger. She nodded curtly. Then do not slow me down. He smirked. Yes, ma'am. The lift clanged to a stop. As they stepped off, the corridor ahead was slick with some kind of organic residue, pale and fibrous, clinging to walls and ceiling. Overhead, the lights sputtered, casting dancing shadows that made everything look alive. The stench was intense, like rotting flesh laced with chemicals. She wondered if this was the remains of the biotech experiment or if it had grown over years of neglect. They advanced carefully. She remained in front, blade humming softly. Ren stayed a few steps behind, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. The corridor opened into what looked like a large subterranean chamber, once used for storage or mining operations. The floor was riddled with lumps of congealed matter, half metal and half flesh, as if the station's lower levels had fused with an organic life form. Asteria-spotted lumps that pulsed, suggesting some sort of twisted biological network. It reminded her of the Dominion's rumored experiments in crossing the line between tech and biology, an unholy synergy that rarely ended well. She heard a scraping sound. Something huge shifted in the darkness beyond the range of the flickering lights. Her gaze swept across the chamber. She saw the glint of metal, then the glimmer of an eye that blinked with a mechanical whir. The next second, a tendril shot out from the shadows, slamming into the floor just a few feet from them. Ren cursed, stumbling back. Mysteria launched forward, slashing at the tendril with her energy blade. The violet arc hissed through the sinewy mass, slicing it in two. The creature roared, a harsh, static-filled bellow, as if part of its vocal cords were replaced by mechanical speakers. The lights overhead buzzed, shorted out, then flickered back on in time for them to see the monstrosity lurch into view. It was massive, an amalgam of writhing flesh and cold steel plating, covered in lumps of cables that glowed with faint green lines. Multiple eyes ringed its chitinous skull. Some looked human, others were mechanical lenses. The mouth gaped wide, lined with jagged teeth that dripped black fluid. Asteria did not hesitate this time. She threw herself forward, bringing her blade down in a swift, lethal stroke aimed at the creature's center. The blade bit deep, sending sparks and gore spraying across the floor. The beast reeled back, howling. But it didn't collapse. Instead, it lashed out with multiple tendrils, each lined with spines of metallic plating that scraped along Asteria's armor. She ducked and rolled aside, glancing toward Ren. He had retreated to the edge of the chamber, frantically rummaging through a rusted control panel. "Keep it busy," he shouted, voice echoing. "I might be able to override a containment protocol or something." Asteria snarled in irritation. She deflected another tendril, then stabbed forward, plunging the blade into what she hoped was an essential organ. The creature screeched, thrashing around, smashing bits of storage containers and half-collapsed pillars. Rubble rained down. One chunk struck her shoulder, throwing her off balance. The creature lunged, spearing a tendril toward her head. She had just enough time to dodge, feeling the rush of air as it whipped past her visor. "You could hurry," she growled at Ren, slicing another swath of flesh from the monster's side. Ren muttered curses as he worked. "Look, this system's half fried. I'm lucky I can get anything out of—" "Yes!" He smacked a final switch, and a set of overhead gates began lowering from the ceiling, sections of mechanical plating designed to seal off the chamber. "This might trap it, or at least slow it down," he shouted. "Get over here!" The gates descended, but the creature realized the danger. It writhed and roared, slamming the walls. One gate jammed, the mechanism squealing. Asteria sprinted for Ren's position, narrowly dodging the beast's attempts to snag her. She slid behind a broken console next to him. He jammed another lever, and the gates sealed further, though not completely. Still, it pinned parts of the creature, forcing it to tear its own flesh to free itself. "Disgusting," she muttered, watching black fluid spray over the chamber. The beast wailed with a haunting mechanical echo. The gates strained, and the floor shook. She knew it was only a matter of time before the creature broke free or the entire station collapsed. Ren caught his breath. "We have to get to your ship. Where is it docked?" "Level C, near the outer ring," she said. "But it is only accessible from the main corridors." She eyed the barricades. "The creature may break out," he nodded grimly. "Then we have to move now." He set off toward a corridor that led upward, presumably to the station's higher levels. She followed, her blade still ignited. They ran side by side, both tense, listening for signs of the monster behind them. Asteria wondered if the monster's presence had been fully unknown to the Dominion, or if they had simply not cared. Either way, that was typical of them. No cost was too great if it meant achieving their goals. Their path took them through a serpentine array of corridors, past half-collapsed sections and more patches of living biomass fused with metal. At one junction, they had to crawl over a field of sticky residue that pulsed faintly under their weight. Ren nearly panicked when it began to cling to his ankles, but Asteria used her blade to cut him free. Eventually, they found a battered cargo elevator that seemed to lead to the upper decks. Ren fiddled with the controls, coaxing it to life. As they rode it up, the air became slightly fresher, though the flickering lights and gutted panels showed the station was in no better shape topside. Asteria's mind whirled with confusion and suspicion about Ren's claims. He had called her by a name, Asteria. She repeated it in her head, and each time it sounded strangely right, resonating with a part of her that had been locked away. The elevator doors opened onto a broad hallway lined with shattered windows. Through the windows they could see out into open space, so black and vast it seemed to devour any star that strayed too close. Pieces of debris floated beyond the glass, presumably from old supply ships or the station's broken satellite dishes. The corridor was silent except for the soft hum of life support. "This station is barely powered," Rain murmured. "It's a wonder the gravity hasn't shut off completely. Are you sure your docking clamps will hold?" She nodded. The Dominion provided me a specialized craft with an auto-latch function. My ship remains secure. Great. Then we just have to worry about the unstoppable biotech abomination behind us. He offered a lopsided grin that made her uncertain how to respond. He seemed genuinely unafraid now that they had a plan. They moved on. Twice they had to navigate partial blockages from collapsed bulkheads. Once they stopped short when the station's computer voice crackled overhead, sputtering about structural integrity. The voice sounded half-erased, like a damaged AI routine. Ren turned to Asteria as they inched through a final corridor. "If I'm being honest," he said, "I never expected the Dominion to send someone as advanced as you after me. I thought maybe I'd get a low-level grunt or a bounty hunter, but they really pulled out all the stops." She narrowed her eyes. "How much do you know of my augmentations?" "Enough to understand you're more than just a soldier," he replied softly. "They spliced you with Zyth genes, gave you psionic potential, and probably carved out your memories to ensure loyalty. You're living proof that what they're doing is monstrous. That's part of why I stole the data, to show the galaxy what the Dominion really does behind closed doors." She frowned. "And you assume I care about that?" He shrugged, pressing a door panel. "I assume you used to care before they changed you. The question is whether any of that remains." He pushed open the door, revealing an observation deck that led to the docking bay. "We should keep going." The docking bay itself was in shambles. A giant mechanical door at the far side presumably open to space, but it was jammed shut. Asteria's ship was visible near one corner of the bay, a sleek black craft with glowing engine ports. She began to stride toward it, but Ren paused, looking around anxiously. "We're alone here, right?" She scanned for life signs. "No other humans. The creature is 2 levels below us, possibly trying to reach a vertical shaft. We have some time." He exhaled. "Okay, let's go." They hurried to her craft. She gestured for him to stand back while she keyed in the Dominion override code. The boarding ramp lowered with a hiss of pneumatics. He followed her inside. The interior was small, but everything gleamed with advanced technology. As soon as they entered the cockpit, Asteria was greeted by an automated voice. "X-17, Dominion priority, mission status incomplete, confirm target elimination." She froze. Ren stiffened beside her, glancing between her and the cockpit interface. The voice repeated, "Confirm target elimination, mission status pending." He swallowed. "So this is it, right? You kill me, you confirm your success, you fly off. Done deal." She placed a hand on the console, ignoring the automated request for confirmation. The vow she had made was echoing in her head. Kill him, retrieve the data, return. And yet every moment she spent in his presence, she felt cracks forming in the foundation of her certainty. It was as if each word he spoke rattled something caged within her. Something that might be memories, might be regret, might be a sense of self that the Dominion had smothered. He watched her carefully. "Asteria," he said again, testing the name. "If there's any part of you that wants to know the truth about who you really are, or were, then please, don't pull that trigger. Because once I'm gone, they'll never let you see whatever they took from you. You'll live in the dark forever." Her blade slid out from the gauntlet with a hiss. She raised her forearm, pointing the glowing violet edge at his chest. He stood still, breathing heavily, trembling but not moving away. The ship's AI repeated its request. "Confirm target elimination. Mission status pending." She thought of the roars beneath them, the abomination that was likely still hunting. She thought of the Dominion's labs, the rumor that they'd performed unspeakable experiments on people. She thought of the name he had spoken. Asteria. A name that was hers, though never acknowledged by any of her Dominion handlers. They had always referred to her as an instrument, an asset, something subhuman and subservient. Her arms shook, the blade flickering. She felt tears burning at the corners of her eyes, tears that she'd thought impossible since her last memory wipe. She let out a choked breath, and the blade retracted. "AI," she said in a trembling voice. "Mission is incomplete. Rescind inquiry." The AI beeped in confusion. Clarification requested. She pressed her palm to the console and initiated the manual override. I am taking control. The lights in the cockpit dimmed and a new readout appeared. She checked the engine status, preparing for immediate departure. Ren exhaled in relief, his knees nearly giving out. You're sparing me. She clenched her jaw. I am not certain why, but your death would be premature. She turned to face him. It seems I still have questions, and you have answers. He smiled, though the strain of near death lingered in his eyes. That's a start. The Dominion override in the nav system beeped again, and a crackling voice came through the console. X-17, respond. We detect your craft initiating launch. Confirm elimination. Acknowledge, X-17. Asteria's chest tightened at the sound of her handler's voice. She knew if she responded they would demand proof. If she remained silent, they'd assume something had gone wrong. She powered up the engines, scanning for safe exit vectors. The docking bay door was jammed. She realized with a surge of frustration that they might have to open it manually. Ren hurried to a side panel within the ship, scanning its interface. We can patch into the bay controls from here, but I have to bypass your Dominion encryption. Give me a minute. His fingers flew over the keys. Outside, the station trembled again. Asteria could feel the vibrations through the hull. She imagined the creature down below, thrashing about, perhaps ripping apart the foundations. Make it quick, she muttered. Rin nodded, sweat on his brow. Doing my best. As he worked, the Dominion's voice grew louder from the console, insistent. X-17, we show no life signs for the fugitive's execution. Report target status. Acknowledge or face termination protocols. X-17, respond. Asteria pressed a switch, cutting off the feed. She knew this was an act of high treason. The Dominion did not tolerate disobedience. She had no illusions about what they would do to her if she showed up empty-handed or refused to follow through. Even so, something within her had snapped. She could no longer silence that quiet part of herself, the part that wanted answers, that felt a flicker of empathy for the man she'd been sent to kill. Got it, Ren exclaimed, finalizing the code. The docking bay doors groaned, mechanisms engaging. Through the cockpit window they could see the massive metal panels beginning to slide apart. Beyond them lay the star-flecked vacuum of space. He gave a shaky laugh. I can't believe this is working. She tapped the flight controls, guiding the ship off the docking clamps. With a powerful burst of thrusters, they glided through the opening bay doors. Outside, the emptiness of space enveloped them. Asteria pivoted the craft away from the station. She caught a glimpse of the station's exterior, huge metal rings, flickering lights, battered turrets left to rust. Even from the outside, she could feel the malevolent presence of that abomination lurking within, the station's final occupant. Once they cleared the station's perimeter, Asteria opened the throttle, setting coordinates for open space. She wondered if a Dominion cruiser would jump in at any moment, or if they were alone in the darkness. She suspected the Dominion might already be tracking them, but for now they had a head start. The ship vibrated as the engines roared, and soon the station was a diminishing speck in the distance. Inside the cockpit, Ren sank into a co-pilot seat, running a hand over his face. I should probably say thanks, he offered. I know it wasn't easy for you to defy the Dominion. She stared out the viewport, struggling with a rush of emotion. You said they took my memories. That we knew each other before. He nodded. We did. We were both at a research facility on Taltrian Prime. Officially, it was a Dominion gene lab. They called it a philanthropic project, but they were using us as test subjects. I was one of the lead engineers, though I didn't know the full extent of what they were doing. You, Austria, were brought in after you volunteered for something. I never found out the details, but they had you in deep sedation for weeks. I ended up seeing documents indicating they were splicing Zyth DNA into your system. She reached up, removing her helmet. Underneath, her features showed subtle traces of alien lineage, faint patterns on her cheekbones, elongated pupils. I always wondered, she murmured. He met her gaze. We became friends, or as much as the situation allowed. Eventually, I learned how horrific the experiments truly were. People were dying in droves or being turned into living weapons. I tried to help you escape, but the Dominion discovered my plans. You got captured, had your memories forcibly suppressed, and they turned you into their perfect assassin. I only narrowly got out, grabbing as much data as I could, hoping to expose them one day. She listened in silence. The words rang eerily true. Moments of dreamlike recollection surfaced. A memory of seeing his face behind a sealed lab door, the gentleness in his expression despite the sterile horror all around them. She closed her eyes. I still don't remember everything. That's okay, he said softly. Maybe it's better it comes back slowly. He tapped the data pad strapped to his thigh. I still have all the evidence. Dominion's entire dirty secret, from the mind wipes to the eugenics programs. If we can get this to the right people, we might stand a chance at holding them accountable. Her expression hardened. The Dominion is vast. They will brand us both traitors, hunt us across every star system. That is the reality. Then so be it, Ren replied. I never asked to be hunted, but I can't sit by while they keep doing this to innocent people. Not to mention that monstrous abomination we saw. That's on them. More reason to blow the whistle. She sank into the pilot's seat, checking the readouts. So many swirling thoughts occupied her mind. The Dominion's betrayal, her own lost identity, and the uncertain future that now lay before them. She keyed in a set of autopilot coordinates that would take them to a remote sector with fewer Dominion patrols. We are outlaws now, she said calmly, as if she'd always spoken in these terms. He gave her a small, sad smile. It beats being an unthinking puppet for a corrupt regime, or being devoured by a half-mechanical monster in that station. She nodded, exhaling. At least for the moment they had made it into open space. The Dominion might still track them, but they had a head start, and she possessed a fully armed and advanced ship. Perhaps they could outrun or outfight any immediate pursuit. She reached up and disengaged her helmet's locking mechanism, setting it aside completely. Without the helmet, she felt more vulnerable, yet also more free. They drifted like that for a while, the hum of the engines a soothing backdrop. The cockpit lighting cast a gentle glow over them. She studied the ship's sensor readings. So far, no sign of a Dominion vessel. Her gaze drifted to Ren, who was studying the data on his pad. You risked everything for these files. Now that you have them, what is your plan? Find some authority to publish them? He looked thoughtful. Ideally, yes. But we need someone powerful enough to stand up to the Dominion. Maybe a rival power, or an influential media conglomerate in the Hylian Rim. I've got a few contacts. None of them are exactly best friends with the Dominion, so they might be willing to help. She mulled it over. I see. Her mind raced with possible dangers. The Dominion would intercept transmissions, sabotage any leads, and possibly frame them both as terrorists. There was also the possibility that whoever they turned to might just sell them out to the Dominion for a tidy profit. We should proceed carefully, Ren grinned. Careful is my middle name. That's why you found me playing poker on a derelict station overshadowed by a biotech monstrosity. He shook his head at her deadpan expression. But yeah, point taken. The Dominion has eyes everywhere. She could not help the slight curve of her lips, something akin to a small smile. It felt foreign. For so long she had been stoic, an instrument of death. Now the edges of that persona were fraying, revealing something more human. She inhaled, forcing herself to adopt a crisp, purposeful manner. First, we must ensure our immediate safety. Then we can search for your contacts. He nodded. Agreed. But you should know, they'll keep sending people after us. Probably more than just mechs or bounty hunters. They might send others like you. People you trained with. Are you ready to face that? Hysteria closed her eyes briefly, remembering the facility, the glimpses of other subjects, twisted and warped by genetic alterations. She had sparred with some of them. Some might have endured more brutal enhancements. The Dominion could muster an entire squad of unstoppable killers if they saw fit. "I will face whatever they send," she said at last. "I have no illusions about how they operate." He leaned back in the co-pilot's seat, tension on his face. "Then I guess that's the path we're on. One step at a time." He hesitated, then added, "Thank you." She flicked her gaze to him. "For sparing you?" He shrugged. "For that, and for trusting me enough to let me talk. If we'd had this conversation a day ago, I don't think it would have ended well." She allowed that half-smile to reappear. "A day ago I was a different person, or at least I believed I was." She turned her attention to the controls. "I'll set a course for the outer fringe near Helion rim space. We'll have to rely on stealth. Let's hope we stay under the Dominion's radar for at least a little while." He nodded and resumed tapping on his datapad, presumably organizing the data for safekeeping. She engaged the autopilot, letting the ship navigate a route that avoided known Dominion outposts. The star-strewn void stretched ahead like a vast promise, dotted with the faint glow of distant galaxies. Part of her was uneasy at the thought of traveling with a man she'd nearly killed just hours before. Yet she sensed a thread of trust forming between them. They shared a common enemy, a common pain. An alarm sounded on the console, a proximity alert. She checked the sensor readouts. A large mass was drifting in their path. Zooming in with the forward cameras, she saw a chunk of station debris, presumably from Skyfall. It tumbled slowly through space, carrying with it the rusted markings of the station's name, scorched and half unreadable. She guided the craft around it. Her mind flicked back to the monster they had left behind. Had it died in the station's collapse, or would it survive somehow, sustained by the labyrinth of biotech that had fused with the station's systems? The idea unsettled her, though she doubted the Dominion would bother cleaning it up. They had a habit of abandoning failures to fester. Ren rubbed his hands across his face as the minutes stretched into an hour. Eventually he set the datapad aside. "I guess we can breathe for a moment," he said, leaning back. "You know, before they find us, or we find trouble ourselves." She tilted her head, watching him. "You seem unnervingly calm." He chuckled, a short, humorless sound. "Trust me, I'm not calm. I'm exhausted. I spent weeks on that station, convinced every day would be my last, sure I'd never see anyone from my past again. Then you showed up, and I thought, well, that's it. The Dominion's finally caught up to me. But ironically, your arrival saved me from that monstrous creature." He paused, fiddling with the sleeve of his jumpsuit. "And maybe, just maybe, saved you from them." She considered his words. It was strange, but in a way they had rescued one another. If she had not arrived, the monster might have devoured him. And if he had not confronted her with hints of her lost identity, she would have marched mindlessly onward, returning to the Dominion without ever questioning the deeper truth. Was this fate or chance? Another beep from the ship's sensors drew her attention. They indicated a stable route to a lightly patrolled zone of space. She keyed in the final commands, and the ship's FTL drive hummed to life. The starfield outside streaked into bright lines for a heartbeat, then parted like curtains, revealing the swirling colors of hyperspace. They were in transit now, beyond the immediate reach of Dominion hunters. She released a slow breath. Her gauntlet, usually humming with energy, felt heavier somehow, as though it too bore the weight of her choices. The interior lights cast sharp angles across the cockpit, illuminating the tension in Ren's posture, the slight trembling in her own fingers. She slid off the pilot's seat, letting the autopilot control the jump. Ren turned in the co-pilot's chair to face her. "So," he said softly, "what happens next?" She raised her gaze to him. "I need to learn who I was. You said your stolen data might contain files about me, about the experiments. I want to see them." He nodded. "I'll show you. It's not easy reading, a lot of it is heavily encrypted, but I've got partial logs that mention you by name, a real name, not an alphanumeric code." Her voice tightened. "I'm ready. I have to be." She thought of the possibility that she might discover horrors about herself, or about what had been done to her. But ignorance was no longer an option. If the Dominion had shaped her into a living weapon, she deserved to know precisely how and why. He retrieved the datapad, tapping in a few commands. She stepped closer, glancing over his shoulder as lines of text and images scrolled by. Project Hysteria, it read at the top of one file, followed by paragraphs of medical jargon. She felt her breath catch, reading references to splicing protocols, synaptic rewiring, memory suppression. She saw a list of subject names, some marked terminated, others in progress, and next to her name the word convert. She read further, feeling numb. The logs described how her empathy centers had been suppressed, her recollections replaced by synthetic constructs that instilled unwavering loyalty to the Dominion. There were notes about her extraordinary reflexes, the success of the Zith gene infusion, the potential for telepathic blossoming if further tested. Ren scrolled through more data, images of a younger woman strapped to a gurney, her eyes vacant. It was her. She let out a shaky gasp, stepping back. She recognized her own face, although the hair was shorter and there was a softness in her eyes that she no longer possessed. "They turned you into a soldier," he said gently. "They needed the perfect executioner. You had all the right DNA markers for it. I tried to intervene, but they threatened to kill us both. Eventually, I just ran, hoping to find a way to free you. But it was too late. They'd already reprogrammed you." She closed her eyes, heartbreak slicing through her chest. She had never suspected her entire existence was a patchwork of stolen free will. Yet a flicker of relief ran through her, knowing she had once been someone else, maybe someone who cared, who loved, who believed in more than just orders. No wonder the Dominion had hammered that out of her. She looked at him, tears brimming in her eyes. I don't know if I can ever get all those memories back." He set a hand gently on her shoulder. "You might not. But you can forge new ones they can't erase, and maybe, with time, glimpses of your old self will surface. I'll do whatever I can to help." She studied his face, reading sincerity there. In a heartbeat, she realized how much trust she was placing in him, this man who was once her friend. Perhaps the Dominion had considered that bond inconsequential, easy to erase, but it had proved powerful enough to stay her blade. "Thank you," she whispered, "for remembering me." He nodded. "Of course." She let the images linger on the datapad for a moment longer before she stepped away. Her mind needed time to process. "How long until we exit hyperspace?" He glanced at the console. "We've got a few hours. Might as well get some rest or figure out a plan for what to do once we arrive." Hysteria nodded, then knelt beside a storage compartment. She pulled out a small kit containing medical supplies and rations. "We should dress your injuries. You took a beating from that creature." He glanced down at the torn sleeve of his jumpsuit, a crust of dried blood on his arm. "Right, guess I was too pumped with adrenaline to notice." She approached, opening the kit. With mechanical efficiency, she disinfected and bandaged a shallow gash on his arm. Her training as a soldier gave her basic medic knowledge. As she worked, she felt the tension in his body, the slight hiss of pain when she pressed too firmly. She apologized quietly. He gave a soft laugh. "You know, you're a lot gentler than you look." She managed a half-smile, discarding the used bandages. "I suppose that is new for me. Usually I'm not so considerate." He flexed his arm, testing the bandage. "Well, I appreciate it. Maybe it means your old self isn't as lost as they wanted you to be." She rose to her feet. "I hope you're right." Her gaze drifted to the swirling colors of hyperspace beyond the cockpit windows. "So, our next step is to find a place to lay low while we figure out how to distribute this data." He nodded, powering off the datapad and tucking it away safely. "I'm thinking a neutral trade port in the Hellion Rim. I know someone who deals in covert transmissions. If we can slip them the documents, they can broadcast it to multiple star systems. Even the Dominion will have trouble suppressing it once it's out there." She folded her arms. "And what if your contact turns on us?" He shrugged. "There's always that risk, but I trust them enough to try." She respected his resolve, though the possibility of betrayal made her stomach knot. Then again, living as a Dominion assassin had taught her all about betrayal, even if she hadn't fully grasped it at the time. "So we become heralds of the truth?" she said almost to herself. "Trying to bring down an empire, or at least weaken it?" He replied softly. "If we don't try, who will?" She turned to look at him. "All my life, at least all I can remember, I've been obeying them, carrying out missions, spilling blood for their cause. I never thought to question it. Now, you're telling me I was once the kind of person who would stand against them." A wry smile twisted her lips. "Hard to believe." He reached out, resting a hand gently on her wrist. "I remember that you were never cruel. Even during the earliest days of your modifications, you tried to keep your compassion. That's why they had to push so hard to break you." She closed her eyes, letting herself feel the flood of conflicting emotions. Anger at what was done to her, remorse for those she had killed, a spark of hope that she might reclaim some part of herself. "Then I will finish what I started, with your help." Ren's features brightened. "I'm glad to hear it." He scanned the cockpit once more. "We should probably do a more thorough check on your ship's systems just to be safe. Then maybe one of us should rest. If the Dominion is tracking us, we'll need all our energy once we drop out of hyperspace." She agreed, and they divided tasks. For the next hour they worked in relative silence, scanning the vessel's power core and verifying the stealth modules. The Dominion had equipped her with advanced gear to ensure her swift movement behind enemy lines. Now, ironically, she would use those same technologies to elude the Dominion itself. Eventually, Ren retreated to the small crew bunk to catch some sleep. Asteria lingered in the cockpit, gazing at the shifting tunnel of hyperspace. She removed her gauntlet, letting her fingers flex. The pale lines of alien genetics were etched into her flesh. She traced them gingerly, reminded of the lab photos that showed her strapped to a table, tubes running into her veins. She felt a surge of nauseating anger. The Dominion had shaped her into a tool, but they had miscalculated something fundamental, a seed of self that refused to die. She sank into the pilot's chair, feeling strangely weary. The day's events blurred in her mind. The tension of hunting Ren, the monstrous confrontation, the final act of defiance. Slowly, she let her eyes close, letting herself drift into a light sleep, lulled by the rumble of the engines. She dreamed of flickering images, a memory of Ren smiling as he handed her a data module, telling her it was important they keep it safe. Then, in the same dream, Dominion officers stormed in, pointing weapons. The dream shifted, became a swirl of white lab lights, the high-pitched whine of scanning devices. Voices told her she would be the perfect soldier, that she must forget everything else. She saw herself from the outside, screaming silently, pounding on the inside of her own skull, unable to break free. Then, abruptly, the dream shattered. She woke to a soft beep. They were exiting hyperspace. Her heart pounded as she blinked away the sleep, reacclimating. She quickly reattached the gauntlet, stepping to the console. Ren emerged behind her, rubbing his eyes. "We there?" "Almost," she answered, hitting a few switches. The swirling colors of hyperspace faded, replaced by normal stars. A dull green planet loomed large on the view screen, a remote industrial world in the Helian rim. She saw faint glimmers of orbital platforms. A small half-ring space station hovered near the planet's northern pole. Ren peered at the console. "That station is called Tesha's Landing, if I recall. Mostly neutral, known for black market trade. We can probably dock without too many questions, especially if your stealth modules are as good as they look." She nodded. "We'll keep a low profile." She guided the ship closer, scanning for Dominion signals. So far, the region appeared free of official Dominion warships. She steered them toward the station's docking zone. A raspy voice crackled over local comm frequencies, asking for identification. Rin sent them a forged ID file, and within moments they were granted permission to land. The local authorities clearly cared more about the docking fee than who exactly was arriving. They touched down in a cramped bay overshadowed by looming hulls of battered freighters and privateers. The station itself appeared run down, neon lights flickering in corridors, with a haze of dubious atmospheric quality. Through the cockpit window, Asteria could see various alien species milling about, cargo drones whirring. This was a place of hustlers, smugglers, and questionable morals. But it was also a refuge from Dominion eyes, at least temporarily. She powered down the engines and they shared a look. "We go together," she said. "I won't risk letting you wander off with the data. If you flee, I'll be the Dominion's target again." He held up his hands. "I'm not planning to run. We're in this together now, remember?" She nodded, standing. They exited the ship and descended the ramp. Immediately the station's stale, artificially scented air enveloped them. Neon signs pulsed overhead, advertising everything from starship repairs to exotic off-world goods. Crews of rough-looking mercenaries loitered about, eyeing new arrivals warily. No one paid them more than a cursory glance, likely figuring them for yet another pair of shady travelers with secrets to hide. They moved through the docking concourse, heading toward a service elevator that led deeper into the station. Rin explained that his contact maintained a hidden comm relay in a sublevel. She was quiet, letting him lead, staying alert for any signs of Dominion presence. A few times she spotted suspicious watchers in the crowd, but they seemed to lose interest quickly, focusing on easier marks or known faces. Soon they reached a nondescript bulkhead door labeled Maintenance. Rin keyed in a code and it slid open, revealing a cramped hallway lined with pipes and flickering lights. Asteria felt her pulse quicken with each step. She'd never done anything like this. Conspiring against the Dominion, seeking to broadcast classified data. She kept waiting for an attack from behind or a sting operation orchestrated by Dominion agents. At the end of the hall, they came to a cluttered chamber stacked with old crates. In the center stood a slender woman with bright cybernetic eyes. She wore a battered coat and was in the midst of patching some wires into a console. She turned sharply when they entered, eyes narrowing. Ren raised his hands disarmingly. "Echo, it's me. Don't shoot," she snorted. "Ren Voss, you've got a talent for showing up at the worst time. Dominion's been sniffing around these parts lately." Her gaze flicked to Asteria, taking in the gauntlet. "Friend of yours, I take it?" Asteria introduced herself simply as Asteria, not the Dominion moniker. Echo shrugged and gestured for them to close the door. "All right, what do you want?" Ren explained in hushed tones that they had critical Dominion data to broadcast. He asked if Echo could link them to multiple independent news streams, plus a few underworld channels. Echo listened, glancing between them with suspicion. "If this data is as hot as you say, it'll put a target on all of us. The Dominion will be furious." Ren nodded. "We know. But it's bigger than us. People need to see what the Dominion is doing." Echo considered, then sighed. "Fine, but I'm not dying for nothing. You can pay me in credits or goods, no freebies." "We'll pay," Ren assured her. "But once you see the files, you'll understand." Echo rolled her eyes. "Sure, I've heard that line before. Well, let's get on with it." She stepped aside so Ren could connect his datapad to the console. Meanwhile, Asteria kept watch by the door. Her shoulders tensed, half expecting an ambush, but the corridor remained silent. As Ren initiated the data transfer, lines of encrypted code scrolled across the console's screen. Echo's face shifted from annoyance to surprise as she skimmed the files. "Damn," she whispered. "They're messing with people's minds, running advanced gene splicing. This is big. Real big." Asteria sensed a swell of satisfaction tinged with dread. They were committing a bold act of defiance. If successful, it might spark a public outcry, or at least sow distrust in the Dominion's propaganda. But it would also paint a target on them so large, they'd have to remain constantly on the run. She turned to Ren. "How long until the broadcast is complete?" He glanced at Echo, who typed furiously. "A few minutes to fully upload. Once it's out, it'll propagate quickly across multiple networks. Even if Dominion tries to shut it down, the data will be mirrored." Echo muttered a curse under her breath. "They'll definitely try. Don't expect this to bring them to their knees overnight, but it'll rattle them. Suddenly, a faint vibration pulsed through the station. An alarm klaxon blared, echoing through the halls. A voice came over the loudspeakers, barking in multiple languages, reporting that an unidentified vessel had arrived in orbit, possibly Dominion. Asteria's heart pounded. "They're here," she said tersely. "We have to hurry." Ren typed quicker, urging the data to finish uploading. Echo cursed again, moving to a different console to accelerate the process. Within seconds, a final green bar signaled success. "Done," Echo said, yanking out the data cable. "It's live. Now get out of here before they lock down the station." Asteria nodded, turning on her heel. Ren grabbed his datapad, gave Echo a grateful nod, and followed. They raced back down the corridor, alarm lights flashing crimson. Through the station speakers they heard urgent warnings, talk of Dominion troopers inbound. Fear clenched Asteria's stomach. She'd once been among those troopers. Now she was their target. They emerged into the docking concourse, which was chaos. Station security was on high alert, corralling bystanders. A few uniformed Dominion soldiers were scanning the crowd, brandishing rifles. Rin ducked behind a stack of crates, and Asteria followed, scanning for an opening. She saw that the path to their ship was partially blocked by troopers setting up a checkpoint. She clenched her fists, gauntlet humming. "We can fight through," she whispered. Ran grimaced. "There are at least 6 of them, maybe more." "You sure about that?" She gave a curt nod. "I've faced worse. Stay close." She stood, letting the blade extend. A flick of her wrist and she vaulted over the crates. One trooper spotted her, shouted a warning, but she was already upon him, slashing his rifle in half. She twisted, kicked him aside. Another soldier opened fire, but the plasma bolt sizzled past her as she spun, deflecting one shot with the blade. The station corridor filled with the smell of scorched metal. Ren took advantage of the distraction, darting behind another trooper and cracking him on the head with a pipe he'd scooped from the ground. The soldier stumbled, and Asteria delivered a swift blow to knock him unconscious. More shots rang out. She advanced in a flurry of graceful, lethal movements, forcing the Dominion troopers into disarray. They had never expected to face one of their own greatest assets turned against them. Within moments, the troopers were down or retreating, and Asteria motioned for Ren to follow. They sprinted across the concourse to their ship's hatch. She keyed in the access code, and the ramp lowered. They dashed inside, sealing it behind them. A siren wailed outside, and more troopers were undoubtedly on the way. She bolted to the cockpit, Ren right behind her. She fired up the engines, ignoring the docking authorities' frantic instructions. The station's magnetized clamps tried to hold them in place, but Ren hacked the controls again, forcing the clamps to disengage. The Dominion troopers, visible through the external cameras, attempted to storm the bay, but the ship's thrusters roared, lifting them off the deck. Seconds later, they shot out of the station's docking corridor into open space. In the blackness beyond, a sleek Dominion cruiser hovered menacingly, bristling with cannons. Astria's heart lurched. She angled the ship away, engines at full burn. The cruiser fired a volley of warning shots, flashes of light zipping past. The hull rattled as a few blasts struck near them. Ren cursed, scanning the readouts. "We can't take a direct hit from that thing. It's got firepower to punch right through us." Asteria clenched her jaw. "We outrun them." She diverted all power to the engines, pushing them dangerously close to overheating. The cruiser followed, sending out smaller fighter craft. A tense chase ensued, weaving through the station's orbit. The fighters soared in, peppering them with plasma fire. She tapped the controls for the stealth module, which flickered uncertainly. The damage from the docking bay gunfire had compromised some systems. Nevertheless, she engaged it. For a moment they vanished from the enemy's sensors, and the fighters overshot them. She took the opportunity to maneuver behind a chunk of orbital debris, accelerating away from the cruiser. Ren watched the sensors anxiously. "They might reacquire us any second. Keep going." The ship rattled from stress on the engines, but Asteria coaxed more speed from them. A scattering of smaller meteoroids drifted near the planet's rings, offering partial cover. She navigated nimbly among them, with Ren calling out hazard alerts. The Dominion ships searched the area, scanning for any sign of them. She held her breath, guiding the craft deeper into the swirling belt of rock and ice. Their stealth module flickered in and out, but each time it reactivated just enough to hide them from a direct scan. Finally, the sensor array showed the Dominion cruiser falling behind, searching a different quadrant. Ren wiped sweat from his brow. "I think we lost them, for now." Asteria exhaled, her heart thudding. "They won't give up easily." "But the data is out," he said, forcing a grin. "It's only a matter of time before the transmission spread. People will see what the Dominion has done." She nodded, tension in her shoulders easing a fraction. "We just declared war on them, and they'll come for us." He placed a hand gently on hers as it rested on the throttle. "We'll be ready, and we won't be alone. Once the galaxy knows the truth, others might stand with us." She allowed herself a moment of relief, letting the adrenaline subside. Then she set a course away from the Hellion Rim, deeper into uncharted territory. They might need to find refuge in the frontier systems, or even among pockets of rebels rumored to exist far from Dominion influence. Regardless of the path, she was certain of one thing. She was no longer the Dominion's executioner. She was Asteria, a woman with a stolen past, forging a new future. As the ship burned away from Tertia's landing, the swirl of planet and station receding behind them, she reflected on how her entire life had changed in the span of a single mission. The memory wipes, the conditioning, the unstoppable assassin persona, they still clung to her like shadows. But Ren's presence reminded her she wasn't alone, and the knowledge they had unleashed upon the galaxy might in time crack the Dominion's hold on countless others. She eased the throttle forward, letting the stars elongate as they prepared another FTL jump. She had no illusions about the difficulty of the road ahead, but at least she was free to choose that road for herself. Rin busied himself with the navigation panel. She glanced over at him, recalling how she'd nearly run him through with her energy blade on that decaying station. Now they were allies in a desperate quest. Strange how fate could twist so radically. He finished the calculations and the drive began to hum. She took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. He gave her a resolute nod and she returned it. The ship lunged forward, the starlight stretching into gleaming lines. In a flash, they vanished into hyperspace. They were on the run, but they were alive, and they carried with them a spark of rebellion that might one day topple the Dominion's tyranny. For the first time since she could remember, Asteria felt a stirring of possibility, a realization that she was more than the sum of the Dominion's manipulations. That spark ignited the faint flicker of hope in her heart. She would not blindly murder in the Dominion's name anymore. She would fight for the truth, for the stolen lives, for her own stolen memories. And side by side with Ren, she would face whatever horrors or battles waited in the dark expanse of the galaxy. The alien executioner had met her target, and in choosing to spare him, she had also saved herself.